The fact that there's other people out there in the country who do not have the time and energy to be focusing on the environment. They need to go to work, come back home, figure out where they're getting the next food, uniform, to pay school fees, and the environment and whether it's being protected or not is far away from their concerns. And I think it's very important that we consider the social aspects when we are doing conservation. It's conservation cannot happen on its own. We need people to drive the change, and we need to consider how people can best make the change.
And a massive thanks to my sponsors, I'm Not Plastic, Ocean Freedom Co., Wazoogles, Gudco, Numuti, and SoPure Net.
Well, here we go. Another episode of Down Deep, where we like to get down and deep, keep it lighthearted, but then also chat about some things that maybe, seem a little bit heavier. I'd love to welcome Jamila. Is it Jamila or Jamila? Jamila, aka the Xhosa Wanderer.
Yes.
On Instagram. Here's your handle right here. So if you want to show some support, hit the follow, hit the like, and keep up to date with what Jamila's doing. I understand that recently you spoke at one of the Wavescape events, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I was speaker. Gosh, time is moving so fast. So I think that was last year.
Yes.
when I spoke.
At Slide Night.
At Slide Night, yes. And my presentation was basically on how we can turn the tide in terms of the decisions we're making in the conservation space, and including more Indigenous knowledge holders and including their knowledge in how we write policies and then make decisions for the environment.
Amazing. And moving on from that, because I was there and I watched it and I found it so very interesting. Moving on from that, how has your research and the suggestions that you've been making, how has it been sort of playing out over the last 2 years?
It's pretty challenging, I'm not going to lie, especially as someone who, I went to university, studied marine biology, and then started figuring my way in the space. And first, I was this huge advocate for marine protected areas. I'm still an advocate for protecting our oceans, but then I didn't realize how the message that I was conveying could be very problematic. And it made me slow down a little bit and think about how I'm saying things and how I'm advocating for things. So since then, I've been very intentional and I've been trying to do more research on how marine protected areas can be more inclusive, and to kind of move away from just looking at the biological aspect of conservation and the social. It's kind of difficult because a lot of the hype is more on the biological. So a lot of funding will go into that, but not a lot of funding will go into the social aspects and how conservation influences people. So because it's such a different shift, but a necessary shift as well, it's been very slow. I also need to take the work and do the work in building relationships with communities, because I can't do what has been done historically, where I go into a community, I do research, I leave, and maybe I do tell them what our results are, and then it ends there. I need to ensure that the kind of work that I'm doing is collaboration, and we're supporting each other and meeting all of our goals. So it's not easy, and it's not something you can do in just 2 years. Building relationships with communities is something that should take time. And that has also really influenced the kind of how I take up space in academia and the kind of research that I'm doing. So I've put a halt a little bit in stepping into the academia space until I'm happy with the kind of research that I'm doing. And I know that we can have long-standing relationships with the communities that I do work with as well. So, yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so let's rewind a little bit. Why and what made you choose to study marine biology, and what instilled that love for the ocean? How did that happen?
Ooh, okay, so you know what? It's such a weird story in that I grew up not really having that much opportunities to go to the beach. But when we were driving down to the Eastern Cape from Durban to visit my gran, you have to drive along the coast. So I would always daydream and think about the day I'm in the ocean. And it was always like a faraway dream, actually being in the ocean and enjoying it and being able to swim as well, because I didn't know how to swim. And then over time, I saw a show on a TV. We had a very defunct satellite TV that didn't have any of the shows that DSTV had, but they were like shows from the Netherlands and shows from New Zealand. So there was a show where there were kids advocating and signing petitions to save their dolphins. And I'm like, oh, like, why are the kids so excited to protect dolphins? What's the issue? And then as they went to explain, they explained that it's like a conservation concern and people aren't treating the ocean properly. I'm like, that's very fascinating. And then following that, that very same year, You Magazine had a kids version of a magazine where they had different careers that you could go into. And featuring there was the fact that people can go into marine biology. And I'm like, oh, this is a field. You can protect the animals. But like my dream has always been to travel the world, explore spaces, explore the oceans, and write stories. It wasn't necessarily to be a scientist. So when it was time to apply, I applied for journalism, I applied for marine biology, but every time I was applying, my first choice kept on being marine biology, and it was a mistake. So I asked for another form. I'm like, I need to put journalism first because that's what I want to do. And then I do it again. Same mistake, marine biology first. I'm like, okay, you know what? Screw it. I need to submit this form. Deadline is looming. I need to ensure that I get to a university and study something. So then that December, I got an SMS from UKZN, which said that I've been accepted to marine biology. And then that's how I got into marine biology. The first year was very chaotic because I'm like, I thought we were just doing biology. Why are we doing physics? Why are we doing stats? Why is there maths in marine biology? But I mean, that is the foundation. I think to be a scientist, you need to know your stats pretty well. So, yeah.
Amazing. So you're originally from Durban?
I was born in the Eastern Cape,
Okay.
but raised in Durban. So I spent the majority of my life in Durban.
Okay. I grew up in Pietermaritzburg. So
Nice.
just around the corner.
Nice.
And then as soon as I turned 18, I left.
Right? Explore the world.
Explore the world. Yeah. Sleepy Hollow. That's cool. So you were kind of by like filling in the form incorrectly many times over,
Yeah.
slipped into marine biology. And there we go.
Here I am.
So who do you work with at the moment? What organization are you a part of?
Oh my gosh, a lot.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I am currently the operations manager at the Beach Co-op. It's a job I started this year, May. But I have been assisting shark spotters part-time with their social media, so I'm the communications officer there. And then outside of that, I am associated with NEWF, which stands for Nature, Environment, Wildlife and Filmmakers, which is an NGO based in South Africa, Durban particularly, and they provide opportunities for filmmakers in the space, as well as other things. So they do a lot of dive labs, free diving or scuba diving, they fund films. So actually I've done a film with them as well, and I'm currently working on one, and my second one through them as well.
What, like directing a film?
Directing, yes, writing and directing the film and producing that film. And then the Stellenbosch, since I'm completing my master's, I'm associated with Stellenbosch University as well.
Oh, you got a lot of moving parts.
A lot.
Amazing.
Lot.
And it keeps you busy, I'm sure.
It keeps me so busy. I'm at a point this year when I'm just like, okay, I'm almost done with my master's. I'm almost done with the film. Once I'm done with everything, I just need to rest a little bit. So it's been a very, very busy year.
Awesome. Yeah, Beach Co-op is one of the organizations we work with at Wavescape. And did you take over from Megan Rose?
Yes.
Okay, great stuff. Yeah, so I had a chat with Megan and Anya just before the Wavescape Festival this year in March.
Yes.
So yeah, I know their initiatives and their program really well.
Yeah.
And they're a really cool bunch of peeps, right?
It's a very, very cool bunch of peeps, but also the work that they're doing, particularly for the False Bay and Cape Town community. I think it's great work, creating communities that care, but also directly tackling the plastic issue, and also promoting other people to tackle the plastic issue in our coastlines as well. I think that's very, very important. We know that we need healthy oceans so that we are healthy, and I think to be directly involved in that is very, very important. And I'm glad that I'm associated with the Beach Co-op as well and able to do that kind of work.
I think what they do differently in terms of beach cleanups is that they are very data driven and making sure that there's an audit trail and a data trail, of what gets picked up and where it's, and in doing so, they can identify, like, if it's a certain lollipop stick and we can identify who it's from, then again, you can approach these organizations and say, what's going on?
I think that's very important, actually, to have the data aspect as well. We tend to do these things, and I think they're very important during the beach cleanups, but also to see what the big contributors are and who is involved, like whether it's Coca-Cola or whoever. It's very important to also see, hey, this company has been contributing to a lot of, contributing somehow to the waste that's landing on our beaches, and we need to address them and ask them. I mean, you introduced so many organizations here who are doing things differently, and it's possible for those organizations as well to do things differently, especially with the money that they do have and the power they have in the space and in the world as well. So to be data-driven, I think it allows us to also show them, hey, these are the numbers in False Bay, Muizenberg Beach. There were 500,000 lollipop sticks that we found in a span of 3 years. Can we do something about that? We know that False Bay is part of a marine protected area. We know that there's important species. We have our sharks, our turtles, our whales. Can you contribute in doing something good? So I'm happy that there is someone who is using data to also kind of drive a change in the space as well.
Yeah, and you can only effectively do that when you've got data to back it up.
Yes.
So it is highly important. I mean, like these guys here, Good Sheet, they actually, it says there, forest-friendly toilet paper that builds toilets. And what they actually do is a portion of their funding goes to building toilets in the Eastern Cape.
Nice.
So because we all know, how important it is to have correct sanitation, and sort of there's health and safety issues around, some of the older style toilets. So I think those sorts of things are great, which kind of, we can easily segue into me asking this question. How, because, we live in a country where there's communities that are, look, they're undergoing tough times in terms of, just making ends meet, and getting through the day. And so it's very tough to talk about conservation to someone who's more concerned about where they're going to get their meal from. It's a really tough thing to preach or have an sort of this education sort of to roll it out. I'm sure that you faced these challenges, right?
I think I have mentioned that at one point I was like pro, and I am pro marine protected areas. But you raising that, the fact that there's other people out there in the country who do not have the time and energy to be focusing on the environment. They need to go to work, come back home, figure out where they're getting the next food, uniform, to pay school fees, and the environment and whether it's being protected or not is far away from their concerns. And that's something I have been made aware of in this space as I've engaged more with people, with different stakeholders as well. I think it's very important that we consider the social aspects when we are doing conservation. Conservation cannot happen on its own. We need people to drive the change, and we need to consider how people can best make the change. There are so many ways in which we can involve people in the right way and have them advocate for the environment, but still allow them to have alternative means of livelihoods where they protect the environment so that they can put bread on their table. So it's not that the options and alternatives are not there, they are there, but unfortunately how we do conservation in South Africa is still from a very Western mindset and a more colonial mindset as well. So a lot of marine protected areas and parks were a concept that was created in America, because a lot of those parks they were destroyed and they couldn't have communities there because the more human influence there is, the more destruction there is. So they separated people from the environment, and it worked. Not really, but it kind of worked. But then that is America, and Africa is completely different, where a lot of communities are dependent on the environment. The moment you remove people from the environment, you're starting to cause problems. And now you're asking them to find alternative ways of living and ways that they might not have thought of. And then they end up choosing what's easier, and sometimes what's easier is what's bad, or what we deem as bad. So having those conversations and seeing how we can change how conservation is done in South Africa and include more communities, whether it's in Durban or in the Eastern Cape or in the Western Cape, but to have those voices be part of policy is very important, because then we can do conservation right. For me, it's like, how are we investing so much money and effort and time when there is a chance and a greater chance of it failing because we've excluded someone? And then if we do include someone, there's a greater chance of it, being successful. And conservation can be more successful in South Africa, whether we're protecting our coastlines or deep oceans or even land. It can be more successful if we include people. What it requires is time. And unfortunately, I think people don't want to take the time to build the relationships. But we need that, because once we foster long-term relationships, we know that the next generation that's coming from that community will also foster the same norms that their parents and their great-grandparents had. And knowing that the government also supports them in a sense, in that they're doing something for their environment, it benefits them, but they're not looked at as criminals because they're taking care of themselves. So I think we really, really need to be more intentional in South Africa, but also globally, in including the people who live in those communities, who know them, who can tell you, hey, that bird means that the rains are coming, or that fish being there means that, the tides are changing and there's going to be an algal boom. Like, those people who can tell you exactly what each plant or flower or animal means in the environment, they're needed. Their names down in policies and in the conversations, very, very necessary.
Interesting. And I'm assuming that a lot of unfortunately, those people in the past have been displaced from these areas. And so that has a direct impact on the environment. And the catch-22 that you have is that the newer generation growing up hasn't been instilled with that same mindset, and then you add the whole, finding it very difficult to make ends meet, and poor environments where things like litter and it's a problem, because it's not something that is at the top of their list.
Yeah.
As I've said, survival and that's at the top of their list, and so it's a tough thing.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate as well. I think also when we do have conversations or try to have conversations, we see that we are met with a bit of resistance, because there's a history of scientists even coming into communities and then having a condescending tone and making them feel like their knowledge that they have is incorrect. And now us who come in with the right intentions, and we still try to be like, hey, let's work together, let's try and do A, B, and C. Can you tell us how you want things done? We still kind of met with that resistance, because there is a bit of trauma as well. But I think there are some communities who are willing and very excited to change and do things and also adjust. I mean, it also takes a lot of trust on both sides. There are a lot of people who are willing to do that and are trusting us to do that as well. And I think that's very exciting to know that we still can work with communities, and they do believe in us, and we also believe in the power that they hold, and we're willing to work together to make that change for our oceans and for the next generation as well.
Interesting. And are you, just to break it down in layman's terms, so that those of us who don't quite get what we're saying here, is what we're saying is we've got cultures and settlements of people that have been in an area for an extended period of time, and they may know things about the area from a conservancy point of view and from the local flora and fauna and ocean life, that has been handed down to them through centuries of education versus the data mining sort of scientists who think they know better because
they studied for a couple of years
Yes.
and now they have that knowledge.
And so you're saying that bridge is the most challenging one to try and connect is those scientists and the people that think with all good intention coming along, but unfortunately not with an open enough mindset to show respect and value to the local people and what their ancestors have handed down to them.
Yeah, that is what it is. It's that, in a sense, science is superior than the knowledge that communities hold. But unfortunately, or fortunately, science is an infant compared to indigenous knowledge. Indigenous knowledge has been driving so many communities. It has been the reason why medicine has been discovered. Certain forms of farming has been discovered. Like, there's so many things that indigenous knowledge and how has influenced and also influenced cultures, influenced how societies have developed, and it has driven all of mankind. From the first man, indigenous knowledge was there. Whether the stories were told in such a fairy tale kind of manner, there was still some truth that was taken from the environment and what was observed. And then science was born, which is very modern, and it's a baby, that's telling you, I know better, but it can learn, and there's so much that can be learned from indigenous knowledge. And I think the issue is that while science has been shown to have made some big discoveries in this world. I mean, we've landed on the moon. We've done so
Apparently we've landed on the moon.
We've
There's some discrepancies around that. I think it was filmed in a studio like this.
Anyone wants to
The question is
debunk that?
why the question is why haven't we gone back to the moon?
That's a good question. Anyone wants to volunteer to go? I don't mind. But yeah, so it's just that science has done so many, even in medicine too. We have medications that can cure so many diseases that we couldn't back then, which, by the way, that medicine would not have been discovered if it wasn't for indigenous knowledge and a plant that the community knew about, that knew it had healing properties. So as much as science has advanced us in this age, you have to also pay homage to indigenous knowledge and how it has laid the foundation. And I think that's also something very important for current scientists who feel like there is no need to be involved in indigenous knowledge or respect it that much. I think it's important that it's given its recognition and people support it. You might not want to be directly involved. You might want to be a conventional scientist, but being able to be in spaces where conversations are happening and saying, hey, as much as I like how I do my science this way, I do acknowledge that there has to be a change. And I think that's something that's very important. But also, I mean, it comes back to how words and naming things really make us feel a certain way. We think about indigenous knowledge and then we'll think it's something that's more like, I don't know, it's not as at a top scale as modern science. And I think also it's what's in a name. And I think we also need to be able to say, hey, you know, knowledge is knowledge, and whether it's scientific or it's indigenous knowledge, they can be at the same level. And we shouldn't look at one as inferior and one as superior as well, but at the same level, and each contributing beautifully in how we do things in the space as well.
Oh, collaborative.
Collaborative. I think that's very important. And not just collaboration for the sake of collaboration or ticking box to get funding or ticking boxes, you know, to be celebrated, but actually having true meaningful collaborations between communities, scientists, policy, government, and having collaboration that spans lifetime. So if the current minister passes away and the current, you know, community leader passes away, someone else can take over and those relationships aren't severed because now suddenly there's tensions and there was animosity to begin with, but people were just saving face. Collaboration that is very, very meaningful because we need that for the environment. I mean, we can see what's happening. from weather patterns changing, sea level rise. I mean, it's been very hot lately, but a few weeks ago, Cape Town was trying to kill us with high waves. Like, so many things are happening, all leading to climate change. And how we have treated the environment, and we need meaningful collaborations to save ourselves. I mean, the planet can do well without us, quite honestly.
Yeah, the minute during lockdown, you know, we could see the oceans actually coming back to life. You know, dolphins and whales were returning, and fish species, and it was almost like it was just given a bit of a respite from man's involvement.
Yeah.
And it very quickly, over a span of a few months, was showing things that we never thought was possible.
Yeah, animals were like, oop, it's safe now. And they were showing up. And we don't even realize how much we contribute into changing spaces. I mean, the noise pollution on a daily basis, and also the light pollution. I know there was a researcher who was speaking about how light pollution impacts a lot of animals at night, which then impacts ecosystems. And the difference between spaces that have light pollution and others that don't, and how animals are getting extinct because of that. And it's something you don't think about. You don't think about how lights at night and in our cities are contributing to changing entire ecosystems, which then change ecosystems when the light is out, and then just generally change the entire space. So our contribution, we might try to change things, but as long as we keep doing the things that we're doing, they are the problem, and we need to find alternatives, quite honestly.
Well, if that's not getting deep, then I don't know what is. That's it's very inspiring, the work that you're doing, and trying to. My understanding of what you're doing is you're trying to connect and be a conduit between, you know, what you've studied, marine biology and science and stats and data and graphs and numbers, and local communities, indigenous people who have through hundreds and thousands of years learned what nature is telling them and have been handed down. And I think that's a challenging space to be in right now. So well done.
Thank you. A very, very challenging space, but I think there are more people who number one, there have been people who are doing the work and have been doing the work, and there are more people who want to be in the space and do things differently. And I think it isn't something that one person can do. There's a whole community of people trying to do the good work. And I think it's great to know that there's more people who just want to do things differently. And it's also very encouraging, because then the future looks a bit brighter. Primarily, not just for our people, but for our oceans. And I think that's very, very important.
Extremely important, given the fact that it makes up 70-something% of our planet.
Right? Only 30% is land. And we have made such a huge impact on the oceans. So, I mean, also just like knowing how important oceans are for so many communities in terms of culture as well. And like the oceans being the spiritual plane for ancestors. And I can't imagine what kind of impact it has on the spirit to have dirty oceans, and then that culture as well. I'm so sorry, this mic. I keep attacking it. But yeah, and it's just like, when you think about it, it's not just the air we breathe in, but it's also our souls that are so tied to the ocean. I mean, all of life on Earth was birthed in the ocean. So the very least we can do is just put our egos aside and work together. And I think also recognize and support people who are doing the right thing as well. I think that's very, very important. Yeah.
And look after phytoplankton.
Yes.
Because that, again, gives us 70% of the air that we breathe.
Our lungs.
Exactly. I just had to throw that in there to sound like I know what I'm talking about when it comes to marine biology.
But you're correct.
No, thank you. Danny taught me that anyway. Well, Jamila, is there anything else that you'd like to touch on?
I would just like to say, for everyone who is out there, just say thank you to everyone around you, but also say thank you to the earth, because it's been keeping us alive till this day. If it wants to, it can just have a major storm, major tsunamis and we're all gone. So just be grateful. And I'd like to shout out to all the people who are doing amazing space. My supervisor, Dr. Nasreen Pierre, for always encouraging me, and everyone else in the space who are doing such amazing work as well. Anya Dean, Sarah Waris from Shark Spotters. All the amazing individuals.
Yeah, all the organizations that we at Wavescape endorse and work with and are proud to be a part of their journey. If you want to get involved with Beach Co-op, here's the link. And if you want to get down to a beach cleanup at one of their full moon, is it called the full moon?
It's a new moon.
The new moon cleanup. Apologies. So if you want to get involved in the new moon cleanup, here it is. Here, if you want to help donate something to the Shark Spotters, who again do a fabulous job on our coastline. Here's the link. Get involved. They're going to all be down below. Jamila, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know what you're doing, and may you continue to forge these pathways and connectives and hopeful collaborations where people start to listen to the knowledge of the elders, and also at the same time respect the data and the science behind it, and hopefully we can find a happy way forward.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much for having me. Also, a quick shout out to Tsebo.
Oh yeah, shout out to Tsepa. There we go. You had to throw that in
I
there.
had to. But yeah, thank you so much for having me here. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
And you too. Thanks very much. And thanks again to all my sponsors and to everyone for joining us on this episode of Down Deep, where we get down and deep. And Jamila certainly got deep about some interesting things there. Go do some research. Click the links below. But above all else, just be kind to one another. Love everyone around you. And most importantly, the ocean and the earth.